There we go. Hey, everybody. Sorry about that. Once again, Zoom was just a little bit smarter than Miss Pam, but I think I've got it figured out. I'm trying something new tonight. I've got a stand up desk that I'm standing up at. And back after a very long absence is tech support puppy. He's down here at my feet, and we're going to see if we can get through tonight's program with minimal interruptions. He's chewing on a bone right now, and it's actually one he's supposed to have. It's not one he stole from my collection back here. Anyway, got lots of fun things to share with you this evening. So why don't we go ahead and get started? We will start from the beginning. So our first segment, it's kind of more of a little commercial. Every year, I have to write a column. I have the privilege of writing a column describing a program that we started, can you believe it now, 15 years ago, the Kane County Certified Naturalist Program. Uh, the first class met in 2007, which just seems like in some ways yesterday and in some ways a really long time ago. But as I was reflecting on that period of time and everything we went through, I thought it might be good to share with you just how that program came to be. A lot of you are KCCN graduates, so you are familiar with how the program works, but I don't know how much of the history we've shared with you. This was something that we had wanted to start here in Kane County. We wanted to be part of the Illinois Extension Service Master Naturalist Program, but Rock Island County, they were the first county in Illinois to kind of pilot that program, and the powers that be at Extension down state decided that they wanted to take the rollout more slowly than we. Well, that really wasn't the same sort of timetable we were looking at. So they said they would work with us. The local extension advisor at the time was named Barbara Bates, a wonderful woman. She was very patient with us, and she helped us put together curriculum that sort of followed the same lines as Master Naturalist. Wasn't maybe quite as rigorous academically, but put a lot more emphasis on having fun while learning and socializing and creating a social network. As we went about developing the program, we realized we needed some sort of a brand identity. So we came up with this logo. This is pretty much what all of our shirt logos and all of our printed material logos are based on. But as I'm looking at it, I see this was one this was back when well, and none of us are graphic designers. We just kind of, put together elements that we thought that we were familiar with, the fonts that we liked, the plants that we liked. We chose the American hazelnut as the emblem, the symbol of this group, because the hazelnut was once a very common shrub in this area, shrub or small tree growing in the understory of our local woodlands. And these days they're kind of hard to find. They're kind of like rare treasures, and that's the way each and every one of our KCCN participants is. They're rare treasures amongst the people, the population here in Kane County. We really appreciate everyone who's come through this program. Here's a look at our first year's graduating class. This was way back when we met at Peck Farm. We all fit into the observation barn. Since that time, we've graduated close to 3,000, that'd be something, 300 people, over 300 people have come through the program. And we've conducted all sorts of classes in all kinds of weather. We've gone out looking for bald eagles on very snowy Saturdays. We've gone trekking, looking at the signs wildlife leave behind. If you are the sort of person that enjoys getting to know nature and you want to see it up close and personal, if you've been through this, you know what it's like. If you know somebody who might enjoy this, pass the word along. We up in the top left there, that was a class in lichens where we were looking at the different parts, the algae and the fungus that come together to form a lichen. We went digging for crayfish one time on the lower right. Those are some representatives from they were fisheries biologists from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. We did some fish shocking to survey the fish in, I believe that was Blackberry Creek. We do star parties. We listen for singing insects. We go out looking for snakes and frogs. We survey the geology of the area, just all kinds of interesting things. I'm going to quit the commercial now because, like I said, it's something we have to do every year, but again, it's something that we also look forward to doing every year because we know we're going to have another crop of nature-loving folks coming through the doors. We are holding an informational session this Thursday at 7 p.m. So if you do know anybody who's interested, send them on over or pass the word along. Give them my contact information. I'd be glad to talk to them about this most exciting program that is already 15 years old. So let's move along. Let's go. Let's dive into the email inbox. This is an email that came in, and the subject was something like, I need help identifying, or can you identify this? But I am now officially calling this email the Whoopsie Daisy email because I went down a completely wrong road. This is a gentleman who said that he was spreading some mulch at his house and he saw this insect that he thought looked like a wasp. But he wasn't able to identify it any farther than that, and he wanted to know what my opinion was. So I looked at it and I thought, oh, okay, I've seen these guys before. I was, by the way, working on my phone. That's an important detail. And I looked at that and I said, oh, I know what that is. That's a black fly. So I wrote the gentleman back. He talked about how the mulch was kind of moist, and I in my head thought, well, sure, the black flies, and this is a black horsefly, and these are quite large, and they can give you quite a bite. The females can give quite a bite, quite a painful bite. They're a pest in agricultural areas because of the way they kind of menace the horses and cows. They do. Usually the female will lay her eggs in a wet area, and the larvae grow then in streams, slow-moving parts of streams, low oxygen areas of streams. We found black fly larvae in Otter Creek a time or two. They're usually in amongst all the leaves and sticks in a log jam, and they're kind of distinctive looking as aquatic fly larvae go. They're almost as long as my pinky finger, and they're light in color, but then they've got dark bands giving them this very distinctive striped look. So I wrote the gentleman back and explained something a little bit about black horseflies, blah blah, yada yada yada. Well, so I didn't really think much of it over the weekend, and then yesterday I was going through my inbox, and the email was still there, and I looked at the photos again, and I looked more closely at the whole picture, and I realized there was a whole part of this insect that I missed. There's a head, and there are long antennae, and those antennae have a distinctive white portion on them, and that is the giveaway. If you see a insect, and this insect was probably, it's hard to tell scale here, but knowing now that it's a type of ichneumon wasp, I'm guessing it's probably over an inch long. Ichneumon wasps are wasps that parasitize. They lay their eggs in wood, and they aim for the larva of wood-boring insects. There's so many different types of ichneumon wasp. In fact, Bug Guide says there's over 5,000 species in the Nearctic areas, and there's probably a few more thousand that have yet to be described. So these are all over the place, but I have to say they're not super common. There's lots of other wasps, especially our eusocial wasps, that we see a lot more frequently than we see ichneumons. But the fact that this insect has these white antennae, and the fact that I didn't even see it there on my phone, I wrote him back this evening and told him, you were spot on with guessing that it was a wasp. Now, which type of ichneumon, I don't know. There's lots of different types, and even that have this same general layout to them. The blue black on the back, the shiny thorax area, the white segments on the antenna. I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess, but I did want to come clean. I'd like to be accurate anytime I'm identifying something, and this was one that I was just way off the mark. I got a kick out of it, and I thought you would too. So this particular tree is something that I say hello to when I'm over at the Potawatomi Community Center. This grows in the native plant garden, and it's not something you see much of around here. It is called a black Tupelo or black gum. We have it labeled as a sour gum in the native plant garden. And maybe you remember a few weeks ago, it was the segment we did on the different sounds that squirrels make. And I had become acutely aware that I was being scolded, or other squirrels in the native plant garden were warning each other that there's this human was coming down the path. I was the only person in the garden that day. And I looked at the tree, and I looked at the berries, and I thought, I don't think I know what this tree is. Well, luckily, Joan Kramer, who's maintained the garden for, probably close to 20 years, she has lots of helpful labels, and at the base of this tree was the sign sour gum. So I was able to see what it was, and then remembered that sour gum is also called black gum, and that black gum is also called black Tupelo. This is a tree. You can see on the map here, its natural occurrence. This, by the way, is from the Illinois Wildflowers website. That's just wonderful for anything native, and even a lot of non-native plants in Illinois. Gives lots of great information. This is the distribution map for this tree. I want to talk to Joan now to find out the history of how we ended up with a black Tupelo in the native plant garden. It is listed or described as being somewhat appealing to beavers, and I know we've had occasional bouts with beavers in the native plant garden. We've basically given up on trying to grow any alder species there because they take that down right away, and they've gone after some of the dogwoods. This remains standing and untouched so far. It's a tree that's described as having gray bark, gray or gray brown, and it's irregularly furrowed with scaly plates. It's got a fairly broad leaf. The leaf kind of reminds me of a magnolia or some of the trees that we see farther south from here. But the really remarkable thing are these fruits. Again, referring back to that Illinois Wildflower website, they talk about how appealing these fruits are to all sorts of wildlife. Both the fox squirrels and the gray squirrels eat the berries. Raccoons and opossums relish them. They also list things that we don't have around here, like black bears and gray foxes that feed on these berries. I'm guessing that if gray foxes feed on them, then red foxes do too. But lots and lots of mammals apparently find these slightly tart and sour berries. Now, I don't know if they're palatable to humans or not, but that sour gum name comes from the sourness of these berries. Um, but look at the list of birds that have been known to feed on these berries. Anything from some of the waterfowl like wood ducks to many, many of our songbirds, perching birds, the corvids. Um, Look at all the thrushes that have been found to feed on black Tupelo, thrashers, and even game birds like wild turkey and bobwhite. Um, I thought it was interesting the and they did put an asterisk by it, but one of the birds known to feed on black Tupelo is the passenger pigeon. Please, 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 if you consider planting one of these trees in your yard and you have success in growing it and you one day look out and you find that it's full of passenger pigeons, will you let me know? That'd really be something because it's been what over 100 years since the last passenger pigeon was sighted. It was in 1914, I believe, that the last one died. So, yeah, looks like this is it's a tree that is very attractive to wildlife, and it might be something you'd want to consider planting. It seems to be doing quite well, even though it does. The distribution nationwide tends to be in the eastern part of the United States and also in the southeast, particularly. This one seems to be doing just fine right here. So keep that one in mind if you're looking to do some landscaping. Now, since we're talking about trees, let's stay in that vein for just a little bit longer. Um, this is a tree. I don't know if any of you recognize it, but it's a tree that I've admired for, oh gosh, probably as long as I've lived in the Tri Cities, over 25 years. It's really distinctive. It's over in Geneva on the West Side Cemetery that's there on Stevens Street, just a little bit north of downtown Geneva. It just has always caught my eye because it is so twisted. It's not living. I don't recall a time when it was living, so I'm not sure exactly when it was that it died. I'm always amazed that it's still there. It must have a following or some sort of a support network because, and it must also still be fairly stable because I know here in Park District land, if we have dead trees that look at all like they might come tumbling down, we're kind of bound by our risk management agency to cut them down. But look at how this tree has grown. When we picture trees like the grain of wood, it's usually straight. Straight grained woods are valued for all sorts of uses, building projects and whatnot. But look at the twist on this thing. And I was curious, why is it? What caused this? How did this happen? Um, so I finally had a chance to park my car and walk over and take a closer look. I looked, first of all, I kind of had a hunch that it was some sort of a conifer, just from, I don't know, I think where the old scars from the limbs were. They're a fairly regular position that it would indicate a pine tree or a spruce tree. When I walked up to it the other day, I got glimpses of the bark that still remain, and it did sort of remind me of there like a ponderosa pine or maybe more likely in this area Colorado spruce, blue spruce tree, but the girth on it was quite large. So it grew there a long time and it's been dead for a long time. If any of you know any more about the history of this tree, I'd really welcome some input on it because I just think it's really cool looking. Now, I did find some reference online. There are people who have checked into this. There's a lot of things I didn't make note of on this slide. There were people. there was an article that was talking about spiral growth in trees, and then there was space for comments. And a number of people mentioned the twisted junipers of Sedona, Arizona, and how that's a reaction to the maybe if you've traveled out there, you know about the energy vortex or vortices that people will visit to kind of get a spiritual connection and the vortex areas of Sedona are supposed to be quite powerful. And they said, well, that's what's causing the twisting of these trees. There's also been supposition that it has to do with prevailing winds, and if a tree is somehow growing lopsided, maybe it's up against there's been something heavy that's compressed the roots on one side, so the growth has become uneven. That over time the winds will cause the tree to twist around. Lots and lots of different thoughts. This particular study here, well, it wasn't really a study, it was more of a literature review, and there's lots and lots of references listed in this article that dates to 1991. And they, one of the leading theories that they put forth was that it is because the tree is able to gather water on one side but not the other. And there's lots and lots of different things that they put forth in the article. They said that compared to straight grain trees, spiral grain stems and branches bend and twist more when exposed to strong wind. That offers less wind resistance and therefore being less likely to break. And the snow will slide off the tree as opposed to breaking off the branches. And keeping in mind that the parts of the tree that are twisting are the living parts. So the xylem, which is the part of the tree that brings the water up from the roots, if that twists around in an effort to get water out to all the branches, it's just trying to do its job. The another article that I read, its conclusion was that there's lots and lots of theories, but there still is a lot more work to be done to figure this out. I just want to say, if you're in Geneva and you are north of town, if you're near Stevens, head over to the cemetery. You cannot miss this tree, and regardless of why it's growing, it grew the way it did. It is just an awesome sight. I'd encourage you to go check it out. Now, last week I mentioned that we were going to talk about some natural areas that are not here in the Tri-Cities area or even in northern Illinois. Last week, I was lucky enough to get away for a couple of days. I met my friend Mrs. Tricia in a place called Lacey-Keosauqua State Park. It's about 4 hours from this area, driving on the major highways. Truth be told, if I had all the time in the world, I would have taken maybe Route 34 and gone down, a little bit more of a meandering way to get there. But this is a state park, an Iowa state park that is in the southeastern portion of the state. It's actually along the Des Moines River. It's not too far from the border of Missouri. It's one of Iowa's oldest state parks. It's actually named after this gentleman, Major John Fletcher Lacey. I thought it was interesting. He was listed on this statue as being the father of American conservation, and I've heard that term tossed out, to different people. John Muir is often credited with helping the American conservation movement, although Leopold was instrumental in American conservation. Well, Major John Fletcher Lacey was too. And so the name of the park, Lacey, is for his name, and then Keosauqua is the town that's just outside the entrance to the park. So He was a six-term United States representative, and he actually did do a lot to help preserve many great wild and natural areas. So there's tech support puppy is on the right in that photo of the statue, and my other dog Joey is there on the left. Um, they were looking at something beyond the statue. I was actually looking at the statue itself, specifically at Major Lacey's eye and what was crawling on it. You ever see that bug up there? It's a ladybug. Ladybugs are cool, right? Well, there is the multicolored Asian lady beetle, and I thought, wouldn't it be ironic if Major Lacey was being invaded by an introduced species? And sure enough, um, he is. Just a little reminder: these guys are going to be trying to push their way in as we get into the cooler weather that's supposed to come later this week. You can tell a introduced ladybug from our native species by the marking there on the pronotum, which is the kind of the shield or the covering above the head. It has an M on it. I always like to say M for multicolored Asian lady beetle, but just a kind of a funny little thing that the father of American conservation, even he has to deal with these insects that sometimes become pests. Now, this is a park. It's one of Iowa's, if not the oldest, it's one of the oldest state parks in Iowa. It was founded in 1920, and as such, it was there when it was needed for the Civilian Conservation Corps. There's a little tribute to them at the park, and as you hike around, it's one of Iowa's largest state parks, too. It's over 1,500 acres, so it's a good sized park, but you'll see lots of signs, different things that the CCC guys built. Some are in better repair than others. There's a lot of bridges, like you see here on the right, over small streams and ravines that traverse the interior of the park. Um, there's a little bird blind that's been set up with an array of bird feeders. So you can, if you don't feel like hiking around those 1,500 acres to do your birding, you can sit inside there. There's lots of interpretive signs inside to help with ID, and there's even benches too, so you can get comfortable. There's a lot of interpretive signs. Well, not in overabundance, but enough so that you can learn about the land while you're there. This one kind of shows where the park is and gives a little bit about its geologic and cultural history. I would like to go back there sometime to see if I could find some of these carvings that are on some of the bluffs. The park is situated along the Des Moines River. That there's a few signs that make reference to the importance of that river. In fact, I think the name Keosauqua means the river, the big chunk of ice in the river, or something like that. But the river was actually key to a number of different happenings, not just for the native people, but for the Mormon people. If you travel from one side of the park to the other, you'll get to an area that's called Eli Ford. Now, this is actually right across from there. This is a little ravine that has some small bluffs in it. Had some really pretty poison ivy. Um, the fall colors were, yeah, kind of like they are here. I think they were not long for the season this year. Here's the Des Moines River, and this is Eli Ford. This is actually where the Mormons crossed on their way. They were had been living in Nauvoo, Illinois, and as they made their exodus there and headed west towards Utah, they needed a spot to get across the Des Moines River, and it happened right there. So there's an interpretive sign too at this area called Eli Ford. Ford as in fording the river. So there's a lot of cool sights to see. There's a campground there that's pretty extensive, but there's also a little grouping of about a half a dozen cabins. So if you're looking for a place that's not too far away, that's not Wisconsin or Michigan, Iowa, there's a lot to offer there. And if you're not inclined to camp, there are these six reservable cabins. They're very reasonably priced too, and they've got a little kitchenette. There's a bath in there, a couple of futons, so you could set yourself up quite nicely. Not that far away, pretty easy to find. Oh, another bonus as you drive, if you're coming from the northern Illinois area and you're headed to southeastern Iowa, you'll probably pass through the town of Muscatine. I know we've talked about that before. Muscatine is known as the Pearl of the Mississippi. That was the capital of the pearl button industry back when people were bringing in freshwater mussels to be turned into buttons. The National Pearl Button Museum is in Muscatine. So it's a cool place, something you might want to head out and check out. One other bonus, the town of Keosauqua has a rocket ship park, just like we have in St. Charles. I think ours, some of you might have been following the controversy surrounding Kehoe Park, also known as Rocket Ship Park, and how the Park District has realized it's a play feature that's kind of gone a little bit beyond its intended life as a play structure. It's got some safety concerns, so the district is now looking at ways to preserve it, but not let any more kids climb on it. So all probably at least a year away. But I tell you, the rocket ship in Keosauqua is very well used and is still being used, and I didn't see any signs of it coming down anytime soon. So I don't know who maintains it, if it's the Park District, if it's the JCs, but it's yet another asset, another reason why you might want to visit this very cool part of Iowa. So with that, I'm going to stop the screen share because it's time for a little more show and tell. All right. Oh, we got a couple of chats here too. Yes, Sarah, we're rare treasures, but you're also nuts. You hazelnuts, you. And Susie's doing her part to sell the KCCN class. It is a really fun group. I know. I personally, before I started working in this field, I was walking around fairly certain I was one of the only people on the planet that was having these thoughts about, oh, you know, why won't people pick up their fishing line along the river? Why isn't anybody else stopping to look at this cool bird? And oh gosh, here's a snake. And then you find out, you join the class and you find that there are lots of other people who share those same thoughts with you. And so, yeah, thanks guys for giving the program a promo there. And Jerry said, now you're wondering why beavers prefer some tree species over others. That's a good question, Jerry, and there's probably a few aspects to that. One might be the relative ease that they can chew into it. Some woods are harder, some woods are softer. But I think there might be a component in our human language, we'd call it taste or flavor. I don't know with beavers, but palatability. If something is very bitter, like you don't see a lot of beavers chewing on pine because of that, or a conifer because of the pitch. It's just unpalatable. But maybe black Tupelo, maybe it's got a somewhat palatable wood to it. And it might, I don't think it's a super hardwood, so it probably comes down fairly easily too. And maybe they cut it down so they can get to the berries. That's certainly a reason beavers will fell trees too, is they don't really need the wood so much as they want to harvest the tender upper branches. In this case, they come with the bonus of some berries attached. Good question. Interesting thoughts. Oh, and Diane, yeah, the fall color of the Tupelo, that Illinois Wildflowers website does show a picture of the Tupelo around Champaign with the dark. So there's the dark berries, and then there's this just brilliant color on the leaves, and it really does make for a striking display. So, uh, lots of benefits to the tree, and lots of things for you to consider if you're a person who might be thinking about adding a tree to your yard. Now, for that show and tell, I got an email the other day, and I've told you before how if I get an email and it says, "Can you identify this?" I click on it right away because I love playing those games. What is this? How do we identify it? And then explaining and hopefully passing along some helpful hints to whoever wrote that email. Well, this email said, "Your weasel is ready." Ding, 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 ding. Made my week. I might have mentioned that this creature was in the freezer. This was something that a local resident had found dead in. This might have been caught in a mousetrap. I'd have to get the paperwork out to see exactly what happened to it. But this is a mounted least weasel. This is an adult animal. It's a member of the weasel family, so it's got all the qualities of a fierce and competent predator, but it's just in a miniature size. It's also see, this was found in it says in April. So this is an animal that in the summertime will have, and you can just see a little bit here on the head, this sort of brownish color. In the summertime, they'll be brown down the back, and then they'll keep a light color on the belly. But in the wintertime, they switch over to a white pelt or pelage, and they blend in really well with our winter snows. Now, the whole body, they usually leave a little tip on the tail. I don't know if I can angle this so you can see. You can kind of see it there. Tip of the tail stays dark, and then I believe the ears too have a little bit of dark on them, because even in a pristine woodland area, snow isn't going to be completely white. There's always going to be little bits of dust or dirt that get trapped on the drifts of snow. So those little bits of darkness help aid in its camouflage. We look at these at the Park District as little gifts when they move in. The garage that's behind the Nature Center is where a lot of our native seed, after we've harvested it, it will go through its cold period out there in the garage. Well, you fill a garage up with native seeds, and you're going to fill the garage up with mice as well. They're going to be coming in, one for the shelter and two for the food. So when you have a weasel move in too, then a lot of your pest control is taken care of. We have found these little weasels. In the wintertime, they're a lot easier to spot because even if they're living primarily in the garage and eating indoor mice, they still have their white fur, so we can see them running up in the rafters. But I just wanted to show you and give you a sense of scale for a full-grown weasel, how tiny these things are. Here's my hand, and here's the weasel. Pretty cool, huh? Really excited to get this. I would imagine we'll be taking this to a lot of different programs. Now, with that said, there is one little bit of disappointment. I was hoping tonight to remember we haven't done this in a long time. We haven't played Will It Glow, where I get the black light out, or sometimes rather than doing it live, I'll do it as a photograph that I'll share with you. I think the last one we did was an opossum. And I'm still waiting. Mike, I know you had sent me the article about the silk inside of wasp nests in Japan that glow under black light. I'm still hoping to get some local wasp nests so we can see if that is true of American wasps too. But anyway, I had read that at least weasels will fluoresce. If you hit them with a black light, they will give off a real deep fluorescent color. I guess because of how the pelt was preserved, part of the taxidermy process, there was no glowing. I was gonna flip the lights off for you guys tonight. I was gonna hit this with the black light, but I did a little test run this afternoon. I would love to hear what the coworkers are saying when I stand up and I go inside the closet and close the door and then I start giggling. But I tried every angle. There was just a little bit on the tail that came back as kind of a pinkish purple color, but even the white, sometimes when you hit a white piece of paper, it'll fluoresce um, with reflecting those rays from the black light. But there was nothing. So I guess I'm going to have to find another least weasel, a live one, and see if it's really true. But that's the only. There's a very very minor disappointment. I am just thrilled to death to have this as part of our taxidermy collection. Maybe next time I see you, I'll have it with, and you can examine it yourself. Right. Um, with that, let's see. Oh, we've got a question. Can people eat the berries? Laura, I'm not sure about that. The I didn't try, um, but we could maybe look that up real quick. Sour gum is how we have it labeled. Um, and I don't know. Does that mean that you're volunteering, Laura? Um, I'd I'd be willing to take one for the team if I knew I wasn't going to get too. Up, hold on. Black Tupelo, the Native American fruit tree. All right. Um, it says the fruits are tasty. Hold on. Um, let's get some more information before we all go running over to the native plant garden. Um, primarily focus on edibility and culinary use. The fruit of the tree is usually loaded. The tree is usually loaded with fruit, and it can grow to be 80 feet tall. Um, you can find some good ones on the ground or pick them off the tree if you can reach the branches. The fruits are often used to flavor pies, preserves, and drinks. Um, all right, well, that doesn't. It's a great edible fruit tree. It's a plant that makes me wonder what a few thousand years of selective breeding would have gotten us. The fruits are not much smaller than wild cherry fruits. Native Americans did not engage in the selective breeding of fruit trees. Well, this is a bunch of random information. Yeah, I guess I don't know now. Laura, it says that they are somewhat sour but sweet enough to enjoy raw with little bitterness. Um,
Yeah, it sounds like we'll make a trip and it
maybe
with a
like we could do one, two, three. um,
see
um,
how long we survive.
well, and you always want to have at least three sources, confirming before you actually go
Yeah,
for, forward with a plan.
yeah.
Let,
I'll bring Jerry along.
yeah, hey Jerry, when you coming out to see us?
No,
uh,
thank you. I want Laura to make a pie and bring it to Christmas or something.
well, okay, so now this site says that the black tupelo barely makes it into the edible realm. The pulp of its fruit is technically edible, but extremely sour, extremely bitter, which is why it is usually used in sweetened preserves. It's been used. Oh, this is uses of the wood. Um, you can use it to make a yoke for your oxen. Um, furniture, cabinets, furniture such as cabinets and caskets, as well as railroad ties. Okay, so it's a pretty tough wood. Um, and
Well, my grandfather made caskets, so maybe it runs in the family.
oh, maybe you've got this automatic attraction.
Oh my God, it's going to be our second career, Laura.
Oh,
The
yeah,
the Aston family black Tupelo tree
Company.
harvesting, casket making, jam making business.
Try our preserves.
yeah, a little
Tell
sideline.
you could buy one of our caskets.
Oh, pulleys, bowls, pallets. Yeah. All right. This. I would say I'm kind of curious now. I'd be up for trying one. There's been a couple of freezes, so and sometimes freezing will it'll change the texture, but it might also change the flavor. Maybe we could take a cue from the birds. Some trees are some I think fruits are left on trees longer because they need a little bit more time to become palatable. But the first website I was all gung ho, and then the barely edible comment makes me think we need to take a bowl of sugar with us.
I'm still game, Pam. Let me
All right,
know.
we'll do
I mean,
it.
All right.
if you think about cranberries, they're really bitter and
Barely edible.
barely edible.
I still haven't gotten the mature palate it takes to eat. I'll put just a wee tiny bit to be polite on my plate at Thanksgiving, but that's a good thought, Jerry. I wonder if they're because that's sort of sour and sort of bitter too, and takes a lot of sugar to bring them around. But anyway, that's all I had for this evening. Next week, we're going to take a look at oil beetles, which are also known as blister beetles because of said oil. Had an interesting encounter with one out in the natural area out at Hickory Knolls. I've got some more fun emails that I have yet to go through and decipher, and I want to make sure before I put them in the program that we have a correct ID on the things that have been sent here. But anyway, really thrilled that you guys spent a little bit of your Tuesday evening having some good-natured fun, and I'll look forward to seeing you back again next week. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Pam.
Have a
Thanks,
great rest of
Pam.
your week.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Pam.
Pam.
So long.
Thanks,
Thank you, Pam. Bye.
Thanks, Pam.
Uh, yep.